Quick note before we start. This video is analysis and perspective, not insider reporting or official news. Everything discussed here is based on public context, league patterns, and football interpretation. All right, let's get into it. Hey folks, settle in for a minute, because there's a lot to unpack here. If you've been around Broncos Country long enough, you know this feeling. The one where you're not riding a hype wave, but you're also not bracing for disaster. You're somewhere in between, watching closely, reading signals, trying to figure out whether the direction is finally lining up with the potential. I grew up with this team woven into the background of life. Orange sunsets over the Rockies, tailgates that start before sunrise, cold December games where you question your sanity but wouldn't trade it for anything. And over the last several years, it's been a ride. Super Bowl memories fading into rebuild seasons. Resets stacked on top of resets. Now we're sitting here in 2026, staring at another offseason where the question isn't just what's changing, it's why it's changing, because context matters. Coming off last season, the feeling around Denver was complicated. The defense showed real backbone in stretches, timely stops, moments where you could feel the unit impose itself. But offensively, that side of the ball never fully found its rhythm. There were drives that opened sharp and stalled, games where early success faded as adjustments came into play, and an overall sense that the operation, while structured, wasn't maximizing what it could be. That kind of stagnation is familiar to Broncos fans. We've lived through versions of it since the post-Manning years. Talented pieces, inconsistent results, identity questions that linger longer than they should. Sean Payton arrived with credibility and a clear framework, and to his credit, structure returned. Standards were raised, but structure alone doesn't guarantee efficiency. At the NFL level, alignment between philosophy and execution is everything. Publicly, Payton has never shied away from accountability. When an offense isn't firing consistently, experienced coaches acknowledge it. That acknowledgement doesn't guarantee change, but it often precedes evaluation. And that's where this moment gets interesting. Across the league, offensive coaching adjustments happen for one primary reason: fit, not blame, not panic. Fit. When parts of an offense plateau, organizations reassess roles, voices, and workflow. Sometimes that leads to new personnel. Other times, it leads to internal restructuring. Public discussion around Denver has pointed toward that kind of reassessment, not as a breaking development, but as a natural step in a process-driven rebuild. What matters most here isn't a single role change. It's what those conversations signal about direction. Sean Payton has built his career on adaptability. His success in New Orleans didn't come from rigid adherence to one system. It came from evolving alongside personnel, league trends, and his own staff. That history suggests that when adjustments are considered, they're deliberate. One concept that keeps surfacing in league-wide discussions is continuity, especially around quarterbacks. Young quarterbacks don't develop in chaos. They develop in environments where language, expectations, and feedback remain consistent long enough for refinement to take hold. That's why internal candidates often surface during offensive evaluations. Not because they're safe, but because they preserve rhythm while allowing growth. From the outside, it's easy to see why teams explore that route. Coaches who already understand the system can introduce evolution without forcing a total reset. Public conversations around Denver have included internal names tied to quarterback development and passing game structure. That doesn't mean decisions are made. It means options are being weighed. Weighing options is exactly what functional organizations do. Another layer here involves play calling and operational bandwidth. Sean Payton is known as a hands-on offensive architect. That's part of his identity. But across the NFL, even elite offensive minds eventually adjust how responsibilities are shared, not because they lose confidence, But because scaling leadership requires delegation. When head coaches offload certain tasks, it allows them to focus on situational football, game flow, staff cohesion, and long-term planning. That shift doesn't diminish control. It refines it. From an analytical standpoint, any scenario where responsibilities are redistributed would be about optimization, not surrender. And that's an important distinction. Broncos fans have been conditioned to skepticism, and for good reason. We've seen coaching changes that promised clarity and delivered confusion. This moment feels different because the conversation isn't centered on desperation. It's centered on calibration. No loud proclamations, no rushed declarations, just quiet alignment. That's often what real progress looks like before it's obvious. Coaching direction doesn't exist in a vacuum. It influences roster decisions, free agency priorities, and draft philosophy. If an organization signals commitment to adaptability and offensive efficiency, it attracts players who fit that vision, receivers who value rhythm, linemen who thrive in structured systems, quarterbacks who benefit from continuity. That alignment matters just as much as talent. Acquisition. Denver has options this offseason. Cap flexibility, draft capital. But how those tools are used depends on philosophical clarity. And philosophy starts with staff alignment. Zooming out, the AFC West remains volatile. Some teams are rebuilding. Some are recalibrating. Some remain established benchmarks. In that environment, stability becomes leverage. Denver doesn't need to win the offseason headlines. It needs to stack quiet advantages, cohesion, development, and incremental improvement. Those don't trend on social media. They show up in November. None of this guarantees success. Coaching adjustments can fail. Internal promotions can stall. Delegation can misfire. The NFL is unforgiving. But from an analytical lens, Denver's approach aligns with how sustainable organizations operate, evaluating honestly, adjusting intentionally, and avoiding reactionary swings. That's not exciting. It's effective. This isn't about one hire or one title. It's about direction. And right now, the Broncos appear to be moving with a level of calm that suggests clarity is forming, not overnight, but deliberately. For a franchise that spent years chasing answers, that alone is meaningful. Broncos Country. Let me know what you think. Do you see progress in this approach, or just another phase of uncertainty? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk it out. Go Broncos.